Well, hello everybody and welcome to you all wherever you are joining us from today. Greetings from the German capital, Berlin, from where we are launching the 2023 Global Hunger Index. My name is Christine Mundwa and I am excited about steering our conversation today. Very much pleased to have you all in company as we get this show underway. I know that as I am talking to you today, I'm speaking to a very global audience. People from all over the world expressed interest in taking part in this event today. Registrations in the hundreds from different corners of the world, and we very much have noted that. And I want to take this moment to greet you all. You might be getting a bit of a survey question now. You're being asked where you're joining from. We're asking about your age bracket. That particularly has to do with the fact that the conversation this year has a youth focus to it, and I'll get into that in a short moment. But I want to get us through just some housekeeping so that our meeting can proceed in the way that we intend. This event, ladies and gentlemen, is being recorded. We have also made provision for translation into 2 languages other than the language that I am speaking in. We have a French and a German translation that is available to you. If you look down at the bottom of your screen, I think by now we are all professionals at some point at the Zoom platform, but right there, if you see that globe icon, if you click on that, you can receive the day's proceedings in your preferred language. If that is French or German, we have made that available for you. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to remind you all to perhaps keep your microphones muted. Keep those muted unless we ask you to unmute. So keep that microphone muted at all times. And then you're wondering, well, then how do we get questions and answers through? Well, that will happen via the Q&A function. We will be able to be picking up all the questions that you're sending through, and I will get them to the panelists in the conversation as well. I know that some of you have already submitted questions going into this event. Best believe we will do our best to bring those questions into the event. Now I'm looking at the screen now and I can see that you've been asked from where you're tuning in from today. I see we've put up some different regions in the world. We're interested to know. And your age, please don't worry. We are not going to be distributing this private data. We just want to get a sense of the demographics and whether we've been really effective in getting and reaching our young people. Ladies and gentlemen, the Global Hunger Index this year launches against the backdrop of us as a global community now only having 7 years remaining to be able to make good on our sustainable development goals that we as a global community have set. And of course, we're fixated with zero hunger in this community. And as we approach, ladies and gentlemen, next year's anniversary of the voluntary guidelines on the right to food, well, we know that millions of people are being denied this very right on a daily basis. Millions of people, I want to repeat that, around the world going without food, being denied the right to food. It is time for us to start discussing this violation of this right, but also how do we correct this? How do we build better systems to be able to correct this? We're looking at our food systems, ladies and gentlemen, and how do we transform these systems to make them more equitable and more sustainable? Most importantly, this year, we're putting the emphasis on young people. How do we get our young people to participate in these initiatives, in this dialogue? Because youth participation in food transformations is so important, especially in the countries that are affected most by the hunger crises. You're going to be hearing today from some of the young voices in the Global South who are really pushing the fight. Their voices are being heard on global stages, including the one we have set today for them. You're going to hear about the research and the activism that they're engaged in as they partake in this effort to transform our food systems, to make our food systems much more sustainable and equitable. I want to actually just kick off on that note now, because we have gone and we've collected some insights from other youth, a number of youth activists around the world. We've put together a short little video of that for you. We're going to play that in a moment. But just a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you all for coming in your strong numbers. Before we get to that video, a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, that we can get this program to you in your preferred language, provided that's English or, French or German. At the bottom of the screen, you've got that globe icon, and you can get that translation if you feel better having this program in English or in German. So why don't we roll that video now? And I want you to hear from young activists that we have spoken to. Here is their message as we get the 2023 Global Hunger Index underway.
The Global Hunger Index can demonstrate that youth are amongst the most vulnerable groups to hunger, and we must protect our youth from this vulnerability.
One of the major barriers that hinders young people to participate effectively and meaningfully in food and farming systems is brain drain. We have a significant number of young people that are migrating from rural areas to urban areas in search of opportunities. Yet most of the arable production and arable farming land is in rural farming communities. And this is because there are no infrastructures in place or incentives that are in place in rural farming communities to retain the skills and expertise of young people.
The youths are enthusiastic to bring solutions to the problems that grapple our food systems. However, they are hampered by challenges such as lack of engagement by key stakeholders, lack of finances, and technical capacity to actualize their ideas.
Well, I think the biggest challenge that young people face to effectively engage in the food systems is the lack of knowledge, as well as lack of productive resources in terms of land, finance, as well as market opportunities.
Our policymakers and the leaders are not ready enough to include the young voice for real implementation. The scope of raising youth voice in the process of policymaking is not enough yet.
I'm here in Uganda, a blessed country, but hunger is serious. People are starving. For our neighbors, it's even worse. For example, Congo and Southern Sudan.
Every child should eat a healthy and sustainable meal, and everyone should be able to afford a healthy diet.
I think the great opportunity of involving the young people in the process of food system transformation is that our young people are becoming aware about their future, their rights, and the policies.
One of the ways in which we can empower young people to play an active and leading role in food systems is to mainstream youth-led initiatives, activities, and all the things that young people are doing to advance food systems.
If I was a global leader, I would ensure sustainable food systems by meaningful engagement of the youths and grassroots communities, not only in the policy making and decision making processes, but also in the implementation as well. I would find ways to attract more young people in agriculture by supporting their initiatives in innovation, research, and also entrepreneurship by supporting them through financial and technical support.
I would ensure accountability at first. Transparency is a big important thing in these steps of food system transformation.
If I had the power, I would ensure that younger people access land, that younger people access technologies so they can invest in agriculture, that younger people access affordable finance.
We have this pivotal opportunity to call to end world hunger at the UN Food Systems Summit and during the Committee on World Food Security. This is what I would do if I was a leader.
I would promote food system learning hubs where young people can come together and share their ideas, that is in terms of science, innovation, and technology. Through this, I believe that young people will be able to understand the contextual issues of food systems, but at the same time, they can be able to take action in their communities to promote food systems.
Let young people lead food systems transformation, and farming system governance. In this way, they'll be able to speak to their needs.
After all, the youths are change makers who bring key solutions to the table.
That way we not only achieve zero hunger for Uganda, but for Africa and entire world. We can do it, and we need to do it now.
We need to end world hunger now, and we need everybody on board to do that.
Wow, so you heard it there from some of our young people, and I heard Elizabeth say, if I were a global leader. Well, Elizabeth, I want to break it to you that you are a leader in your various field, and I think we carry that with us as young people as we take this message about how we want to be involved in creating solutions to the problems in our world. After all, we're going to inherit tomorrow, so we're taking an active sort of role right now as we get into the solutions part of it. Again, we're looking at our food systems, how we can make them more equitable and more sustainable. Ladies and gentlemen, I see that we are in our hundreds here, and I'm keen to know from you, now that we've heard from our young people from their different countries. And before we get into this year's report, I want to hear from you. And let's put this question to our audience, to my colleagues operating the technical aspect. What do you think is the biggest challenge regarding food insecurity in your local context? Give me a word or two, not looking for a sentence, but what do you reckon is the biggest challenge regarding food insecurity in your local context? This is the time where you are going to follow. There is a QR code at the bottom of your screen there. Feel free to make use of that. If you prefer, you can go to menti.com and then you can enter that code when you are asked to, and that code is 4611597. I can see that 12 people are already in there. Okay, so people are saying the dependence on imports, right? Costs comes out twice. Conflict, correct. I see more conflict coming on. Lack of service delivery. Climate change, corruption, funding. There we go. Affordability. Again, dependence on imports. Corporate capture. These are some of the challenges that we're experiencing in our context that we believe are responsible for the food insecurity that we are experiencing. Thanks very much, guys. And I'll just maybe hygiene, I see. Racism, pesticides, poverty, inequalities are some of the words that I'm seeing. And I know that we're all looking at this word map as it's coming at us. And I think as I'm looking at that, we can all relate to an extent with what our fellow audience participants are seeing there. So these are some of the challenges that we see. And I know that my panelists are seeing this, and we're going to be addressing some of these things in our discussion. But before we do that, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for your participation. I think what we should be doing in the course of this conversation is really getting more of your input, aid diversion, a number of other things. Thank you so much for that. But now I want to take this moment to bring us back to the main and core business of the day, and that is, of course, the 2023 Global Hunger Index. What is the index telling us this year? Well, friends, again, 7 years left to realize the goals that we have set as a global community, the Sustainable Development Goals. Here we are at the halfway mark. And in many ways, we've regressed, we've lost a lot of gains, the pandemic, etc., and all the things that we've been through as a global community. But let's hear what the report is telling us. And then we're going to get engaged with my young participants about some of the things that we could do to put us back on track. So here it is, ladies and gentlemen, a summary of what the 2023 Global Hunger Index is telling us.
The 2023 Global Hunger Index, or in short the GHI, paints a sobering picture. In the face of crisis, progress of hunger has largely stalled, and large demographic groups such as youth, especially in low and middle income countries, are disproportionately affected. The Global Hunger Index is a peer-reviewed report published by Welthungerhilfe and Concern Worldwide on an annual basis. Since 2006, the series has measured and tracked long-term trends of hunger on a global, regional and national level. The GHI raises awareness of the scale and scope of hunger across the globe with the aim to provide incentives to act. Combining 4 indicators, the index measures not only availability of calories, but takes into account diet quality and utilization of food. The country's scores are categorized and ranked according to the severity of the hunger situation. The 2023 report shows that global progress in reducing hunger has largely come to a still stand since 2015. The world is falling far short of what is needed to achieve zero hunger. As the year 2030 looms and just 7 years remain to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, nearly 750 million people are unable to exercise their right to adequate food. In 43 countries, hunger remains serious or alarming, with a particularly worrying situation in Africa south of the Sahara and South Asia. In 18 countries in the higher GHI categories, hunger has increased in recent years, and in an additional 14 countries, progress has stagnated. With the current trajectory, 58 countries will not achieve low hunger, much less zero hunger, by 2030. Efforts to end hunger are impeded by what has been coined the polycrisis. The compounding impacts of climate change, conflicts, economic shocks, the global pandemic, and the Russia-Ukraine war have exacerbated social and economic inequalities and slowed or reversed previous progress in reducing hunger in many countries. Low and middle-income countries have been particularly hard hit relative to high-income countries, and large demographic groups, such as women and youth, are carrying the burden of these crises.
The global youth population is currently estimated at 1.2 billion and is the largest in history. Young people across the globe face a stark set of realities, and we are more likely than adults to suffer from extreme poverty and food insecurity. Young women are particularly vulnerable despite the importance of their health and nutritional status for future generations. Young people are actually 3 times more likely as compared to adults to be unemployed. They often lack access to resources, land, skills, and other opportunities that would enable them to engage productively in food systems. These and other barriers are the reasons behind why so many young people have turned away from agricultural and rural livelihoods.
Our current food systems are failing young people. At the most basic levels, they fail to deliver food and nutrition, which is essential for personal growth and development during this critical stage. These food systems are further unsustainable, inequitable, non-inclusive, and are vulnerable to the dangerous effects of environmental and climate change. While we as young people will inherit these food systems which are unable to provide for the needs of the people and our planet, our participation in making decisions that will transform these systems remain limited.
In many countries where Concern and Welthungerhilfe operate, young people report on the choices, opportunities and challenges related to food systems that they face in their lives and livelihoods.
Katika ukulima wa huku kwetu, challenge moja ni maji. Huku maji yanakuanga na shida sana. Kama ningesaidiwa vile naweza pata maji kwa wingi, hiyo ingenisaidia sana.
ومخاوفي هي إنه الحرب يعني لها تأثير كبير. إنه يصير مثلا نزوح من المدينة اللي ببارك فيها حاليا.
Ya bila chakula, bila boga, bila nini. Saa tunabami tupate tu maji, tuendelee na watu wengi waingie kwa hii nini farming, wafunzwe mengi. Maana huko enzi zingine watoto walikuwa tu wanahangaika, unapata ali pregnancies juu.
معناها ما أودان إني عنا معناها وحي أول عن جرا حلقان أولاد التاجين وحي عن جرا إني عنا ما أودان بكاوس وحال لعب كرتو قف ولي وحي هرك وحي كوكسو جناع سنجري ولا بجبار من صمها مرك إن أول أنت عن جرا معون كران معناها هدي 6 وقت عناين أم هالوقت أم لا وقت إني عنا معقول.
Et ça fait moi penser ça parce que façon que na vivre là façon que jeune pas qu'à évoluer a ban moins problème en pile en tant que on jeune.
Masomphenya yangu ndofuna nditadzakhala ndikampani yanga kuti masomphenya anga atheke ndikofunika nditakhala ndi ndalama zokwanira.
أتمنى في الأيام القادمة إنه ينوجد عندي رأس مال أفتح محل أستقر فيه وبهالمصلحة هي إنه فطاير.
Y yo quiero estudiar medicina. Yo me imagino estar apoyando en mi comunidad, poder trabajar acá y no estar lejos de mi familia.
Carré créé, côté que les jeunes chita dans quartier pour préparer un examen, pour te baler, pousser un livre, pousser un carré pour le carré pour interdire pour 2000 cas venir au sérieux dans la société.
Watsogoleri amaiko a dziko lonse lapansi ndikuwapempha kuti atakhazikitsa ndondomeko zokhazikika zoti achinyamata tizitha kupeza ngongole kuti tithe kukwaniritsa masomphenya athu.
Kitu yenye naweza omba, kama naweza pata maji, naweza anza ukulima. Even kama naweza pata shamba kubwa, nianzishe ukulima, niajiri watu, pia wajisaidie kimaisha, pia ni involve wana youth, wanisaidie kwa shamba, pia wapate malipo yao kidogo.
Waxaan jeclaan lahaa in Soomaaliya isbeddel looga sameeyo xagga amniga, xagga abaaraha oo laga caawiyo dadka masaakiinta ah, xagga shaqada, xagga dhismaha Soomaaliya oo dhan.
Vijana watakuwa nkadere, njala itakuwa, makazi itakuwa juu, kila mtu atarudia kwao, wafanue tena mavilaji balime sambele, detrua batoto watasoma mkondisio ya bi.
Nothing about us without us. Young people must be involved in making decisions that affect their future. Embracing a long-term perspective and putting the right to food and food sovereignty at the heart of food system solutions will reflect young people's choices, options, and ensure generational justice. To unlock the power and potential of young people in shaping food systems, their capacities must be strengthened. Agriculture and food systems need to offer attractive and viable livelihoods.
The actions we take now and those we fail to take will determine future food system outcomes. But it is today's young people who will live with these outcomes for decades to come. The 2023 Global Hunger Index reveals a sobering reality and underscores the urgency to act to tackle hunger on a global scale. It is vital that governments do much more to end hunger by 2030 and work beyond that to transform food systems.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, a summary of what the report is telling us. I know that when a report like this comes out or an index like this, we're tempted to look only at the rankings, but I think we need to look at the underlying message here that we're getting. And I know that you caught this, but I just want to reiterate that we are talking about a report that tells us that our future food systems needs to be fixed, because we know that our young population, majority of the world's young people, are living in low middle income countries. And we're talking about places like in South Asia, in East Asia, and in Africa. And that's about 42% of the world's population aged under 25. And they are confronted with food systems that are just simply unsustainable and are highly vulnerable. As a result, shocks like the pandemic, like wars erupting in certain parts of the world, would then accelerate the challenges that our young people are facing. So it becomes even more important that we involve the voices of young people, that we take the ideas that they have and allow them to bring those to the table. You've heard some of them, some of those ideas from some of them. And so now we want to look specifically at youth engagement in our food systems. How then can we make sure that our young people are at the center of the solutions that we're building for more equitable and sustainable food systems? And what changes do we need to make from a policy perspective, and how we practice so that we can leverage the potential of our young people? Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say to you that we do have a hashtag, and that is GHI 2023, for those of us who want to get onto our various social media platforms to be able to get the word and the message out there. But now I want to turn the focus to my esteemed panelists. I'm going to introduce to you all of them now. Sefu Sani is Youth Constituency Coordinator of SCIPM, the World March of Women. In fact, I have a bit of a longer bio for each of them, but I don't want to spend too much time doing that. Broadly, she's an active member of the World March of Women. She plays a vital role in global food security office efforts, through her involvement with the Committee on World Food Security, amongst other things. Pramisha Tapilai is head of policy at the World Food Forum. She's currently serving there as the head of youth action. As I say, she coordinates the youth action track and facilitates the work carried out by independent groups such as the Youth Policy Board and Young Scientists group. Wendy Geza, you would have seen in our video, is one of the co-authors of the 2023 Global Hunger Index essay. She's an assistant researcher at the Center for Transformative Agricultural and Food Systems at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. She earned her PhD in food security from that university. And last but not least, Mendi Ndlovu, who you will also have recognized from that video. She's a PhD candidate at the Center for Transformative Agricultural and Food Systems, also at UKZN, that is the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. Guys, it's really great to be in company with each of you. And I guess let's just start now and get into our conversation. I think let's start with you, Wendy and Mendi, because I really want to pick up on the work that you're doing. Wendy, perhaps maybe with you. You started out, or your research, you investigated how to develop work for youth participation in food systems in South Africa. So that's your particular context. And I just want to know from you, in that research, what did you find particularly surprising or striking as you were researching how to build a framework to be able to accommodate youth participation in food systems in South Africa? Just a reminder to all on the platform today, please mute yourselves so as to not interrupt proceedings of the day. All right, over to you, Wendy.
Thank you, Christine, and greetings to everybody that's joining us for the discussion today. It's really exciting to be here and part of a platform that's young people voice to be able to contribute and participate in food systems. But briefly on what you just touched on, one of the key things that I found while I was doing research for my PhD, I was specifically looking at youth participation and empowerment in agri-food systems in South Africa. So one of the key things that I found was that youth involvement in food systems and in agriculture is primarily focused in primary agriculture. And one of the reasons that is that the current strategies and policies that are targeted at promoting youth inclusion in the economy in South Africa are primarily focused on promoting entrepreneurship. So you find that the support that is being given to young people is mainly on primary agriculture. For example, there are grants and funding and loans that are available for young people. Although this is good, it has certain disadvantages. For example, the support that's being provided goes up to 3 years, which means that it's only suitable for early career entrepreneurs and doesn't support people for the long term. And also because support is targeted at agri-entrepreneurship, it means that it's completely excluding all young people that are interested in the economic and also scientific aspects of agriculture. So it doesn't cater for skilled young people that are looking to find employment. So for example, there isn't much support for young people that may be involved in careers such as microbiology, food and technology, agronomy, or food science, because the support is primarily focused on agripreneurship. And one of the other challenges that I found with my research is that there's a lack of youth participation in policy processes. So because we are not involved in these conversations that shape our future, it's difficult for the support that's being provided to then be tailored to our needs and challenges in our various socio-economic contexts, and also the various challenges that come with gender issues. Thank you.
Thank you for that. From you, Wendy, I want to come to you, Mendi, because you're conducting research. I know that you're looking into climate change. You're also engaged, that is at a community level, into activities around food and nutrition security. I'm always interested to know what led you into this space as a young person. And as you do this work, as you take this work to policymakers, how are they responding? Is it new for them, this idea that they've got to bring in young voices into the conversation and into the consideration?
Thank you for the question, Christine, and hi everyone. It's an honor to be here today. To start off with the first part of the question, I come from an environmental sciences background, and I was just excited to do work with regards to extreme weather events, looking at your droughts, your floods, your heat waves and everything. until I came to a shocking reality that the people which are most vulnerable to these weather events did not know that one, because of climate change, they would get a little bit intense and extreme in their corners of the world, and that they would be affected by this and they wouldn't be able to produce food to feed themselves and their families or to sell to support their livelihoods anymore. From there on, I saw a gap and I saw a need to then try and bridge science as we know it in my side of the world to what was happening on the ground. And I saw that there would be no other ways in which community development will be achieved without building capacity in the issues that we're trying to address within these communities. When it comes to the policy issues, I am part of a bigger research group in my institution and in a center that focuses a lot on food system sustainability as research, and my contribution to the team is mainly on the evidence generation side of things, which is then used to inform policy and to inform change at different levels. For example, at the moment, my PhD focuses on aspects on environmental change and linking that to food and nutrition security in a country that is really, really water scarce. For example, we're trying to identify crops that would be drought tolerant and would be able to grow in environments that are climate change hotspots and food and nutrition hotspots in South Africa. So with the work that we do, we then come up with policy briefs as well as attend policy conferences to try and upscale the work that we do. And also my work has seen me working with a lot of organizations at the local level, that is, for example, disaster management officials, as well as local communities and the South African Weather Service, for example, to just ensure that even though there are barriers, the work that we do gets taken up the right channels to inform change and transformation. Yeah.
Okay, maybe just, I already see a question coming in that I want you to quickly tackle before I move on. Just clarify, what parts of the agricultural value chains are youth most active in? I guess, no, in fact, let's park this and get to, I thought it was for you specifically, but maybe let's get to that later. So what we've done now is just to give you a sense of what we know about youth engagement in food systems and the related governance. I want to now pivot us now to the solutions aspect of our conversations. And this is really how you can be a central solution for shared equity to sustain food systems. That now, I want to come to you, Sefi. So I have noted that question, ladies and gentlemen. I know it, and I will go in and make sure that it's brought into the conversation. So Sifu, you're in Nairobi, Kenya. And I know that you're an activist there. What do you say is the most important barrier for youth participation in food systems? And then where do you see entry points to increase youth participation on the various governance levels? So where do you see those entry points is what I'm mostly interested in, but just give us a mention of some of the barriers that you have identified.
Okay, thank you. I think one of the biggest barriers that I have identified for youth in agriculture and food systems is specifically the intersectionality of food security and food systems and human rights. So that is to deal with the socio-economic issues and issues of social justice as well. And this would include having food as a human right and not just food for profit. But also when we speak about socioeconomic and social justice, this would bring out issues such as accessibility to land and water and resources, etc. It would bring about the issues of gender equality. It would also bring about the issues of poverty, because hunger and malnutrition mostly affect people who are living in poverty. And it points to food insecurity as a manifestation of extreme inequality and marginalization. So the thing is to first address the root causes of poverty and of hunger. And so these are the barriers that face many young people. The entry points and especially into governance, first of all, is to have inclusivity of more young people and for us to have our voices on the table. It has been said before, and I've said it earlier, that there can be no change for us without us. So in all the stages, including from the grassroots level to the national level, to the county level, to the national level, to the international level, we should first have advocacy from the ground up, from the young people who are mostly affected, from the women, the young women who are the ones who till the land. Then we should also have a multi-sectoral approach when it comes to the issue of food and the transformation of food systems. This would include the young people themselves, the marginalized, the indigenous people, and all the people who come on board, including the academia and also the member states. And predominantly, this is the only way in which we can find a solution, when all of us have a multi-sectoral stake and we sit at the table to discuss our issues and come up with solutions.
Yeah, and on that note, I'll come to you, Pramisha, because in some ways, you've been doing what Sifu is saying we need more of, and that is your activism journey really began in Nepal, and you've gone to the global stage. And I'm just interested in how you perceive that message is being received when you and other young activists go out and give your inputs in this conversation.
Thank you so much, Christine, for the question. And hi, everyone. Glad to be in this all-women panel. As we heard from the previous video as well, young people all across the world are involved in the activism and advocacy in different processes, ranging from climate change to food security and food systems and whatnot. And we need to be mindful that young people are not doing this out of interest, but out of necessity, because there is no alternative and the issue is urgent. Malnutrition, hunger, and climate change harm the most vulnerable: children, young people, women, indigenous peoples, and marginalized communities. So I was involved mainly in climate change and food systems advocacy in youth-led spaces and constituencies, from local campaign to international policy process in the last years. And this made me realize that young people have the courage, determination, and expertise to bring their inputs in these spaces and also convert it into action. But this experience also became the learning platform for me in terms of not only to realize how young people are often treated in these spaces, but also to see that there are people and spaces who genuinely want to support young people and youth-led solution. And it's very important to have alliance and synergies with other organizations if you want to move forward. So at SAFU also already mentioned some of the challenges that are hindering the process are most of the young people don't have access to land, we don't have access to finance, we need more capacity building, technical expertise, because young people are doing work on ground, but often we lack the knowledge or route to access the finance, to access the right institutions, and there's a lot of barriers and bureaucratical process. So accessibility to the resources is a huge concern still. And if youth-led voices, spaces, and institutionalized platforms are given the opportunity to nurture and grow through proper mentorship, capacity building, and funding, we can achieve so much in limited time. But for this, we need to listen what youth has to offer and what they want. Instead of going through the top-down approach, we need to go from the bottom-up approach. So if we lack institutional voice, it usually leads to tokenization. So I strongly believe that we all need to have unified effort, and we need to have difficult conversations, and we need to find a solution all together.
Yeah, and staying on those solutions now, I've heard that the young people need to be listened to, that young people need to be involved and included. Mendy, I want to come back to you. Give me more concrete ways, practical ways that we can enhance youth participation in food systems and related governance. Make sure to unmute.
Can you hear me now? Sorry about
We can
that.
absolutely hear you. So give us
Okay.
some of those practical ways that we can enhance youth participation in our food transformation, the transformation of our food systems.
Okay, so when I was going through this question, I realized that for me personally, the issue is not entirely about youth. Being a woman and a young person for me tilts the scale a little bit. I think to just sum up, how should youth be involved in the food systems governance? We need to, in a way, take a step back and ask ourselves if this is a matter of youth specifically or a matter of including the minority. The minority, including women and indigenous people who are also excluded in these food systems. That way, we will then we will know how to sort of work towards pushing their involvement in a way that is sincere and ethical, and making sure that their voice is being heard and the voice that is being pushed is their voice and not necessarily somebody else coming through to try and push their agendas through using them. For example, when we go back to speaking about young people specifically, we need to make sure we get to a point where our involvement in the food systems policy governance space is not only just for vibes that is being used by politicians or different institutions to stand politically correct while they know that they're pushing their agendas through us. So we need to address that first, that we are making sure that young people are able to get into these spaces and voice out their opinions that are authentic and that are theirs to begin with. People need to stop telling young people what to say and pushing their own agendas basically through young people. That way, and as soon as we are able to address issues like that and have created a space that is honest and ethical grounds to enable young people to participate in these food systems themselves, and only then we can basically ensure that young people are then drawn into the space and are able to narrate and become key players in the food systems governance without basically being controlled and being used as pawns to push hidden agendas, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. And Wendy, maybe I'll come to you now, because I'm interested to know, how do we need to rethink agriculture and food systems so that it is not an employment of last resort for youth? Because again, we're trying to offer viable and attractive livelihoods for youth here. So I want you to look specifically at the rethink that we need to do for this.
Maybe Christine, before we address your question, just to add on what Mindy said, some of the practical ways in which policy or policymakers can assist in terms of supporting young leaders would be, for example, in the beginning of the video, Antoinette from Botswana mentioned the importance of mainstreaming youth activities. If you think about all the activists that are across the globe and a lot of young people that are involved in food systems, there's already things that they are there doing, so they just need to be supported, including supporting the initiatives or places where young people, they're being spotlighted in terms of highlighting the issues. So that includes training, mentorships, and opening up spaces like these where young people have the voice and contribute towards making change, but also supporting that with concrete action. So above and beyond what we're doing now, what then happens when the meeting is over? There needs to be concrete action on the ground. But back to your question, in terms of ensuring that agriculture or agri-food systems careers do not become the last resort for young people, we first need to understand the reason why it has become that way. And part of the reason is because a lot of young people that are involved in agriculture come from rural areas. So from a skills perspective, getting involved or starting a career in agriculture doesn't require a lot of startup or resources if you're coming from a rural area, because you already have access to land or do have access to communal land where you can start. So in terms of skills, it doesn't require a lot of startup capital in that sense, and then you can grow from there. So it's very important for us to ensure that we are now investing in young people's education, giving them soft skills, vocational skills, and other skill development programs that will enable them then to go above and beyond primary agriculture. As young people, we are very different. There are young people that are involved in various aspects of the value chain: primary agriculture, agro-processing, transport, logistics, and so on. So we have to make sure that we are creating space for a wide range of career opportunities for young people that are aligned with who they are and what they are interested in, and also improving the connectivity of these young people with stakeholders and other people that are involved in the food system. Thank you.
Wendy, I want to stay with you. Just take this question for us here. What parts of the agricultural value chains would you say youth are most active in?
They are mostly concentrated in the primary sector, like I just mentioned, because it has very low entry requirements. Whereas if you look at the processing sector, for example, if you want to start a processing plant, there could be certifications that you'd need to obtain, and you need to adhere to a certain criteria of rules for food safety and so forth. So it's easier to get into the primary sector as opposed to other sectors throughout the agriculture value chain.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Sifu, I want to come back to you because there is the policy aspect to this as well. You've been involved in drafting policy recommendations on youth engagement in food systems. What did you feel was important for you to bring in this regard?
Thank you. I will mention just a few of the things. One being the diversity of youth, and especially in respect to the multiple intersecting identities and identities of people who are historically subjected to discrimination, which is based on their sexual orientation and gender identity. That is one. Second one is the issue of women's rights. And I'll give an example, maybe for Africa and maybe Kenya, where I come from. It is very difficult for women to own land because of cultural implications and patriarchy. So looking at women's rights, and especially young women who are mostly involved in agriculture, is a very important issue. The third thing, which I'd spoken earlier about, is the issue of indigenous people and also indigenous knowledge, which is also very important for us as young people in practicing of agriculture. Another thing that has been spoken about is the accessibility to land, to seeds, and to water, because this is the biggest cause of the rural to urban migration, where a lot of young people want to look for quote unquote lucrative white-collar jobs as opposed to engagement in agriculture because of the difficulties that are faced by young people. So our policies, especially for the young people, should be able to address these problems, which were brought into CFS 50 from our standpoint. Another issue is the issue of food sovereignty, where people are able to plant what they eat and to also eat what they plant. Ownership and control over digital and other data that young people own is also a very big issue when it comes to policy recommendation. And as I said earlier, also the intersectionality of food security and human rights is very important when it comes to policy recommendation. And also from the different declarations that we have, including the Maputo, where we have 10% or at least 10% of the budget of each country are dedicated to agriculture and food systems, and a specific percentage going to the young people. Thank you.
Thank you. Pramish, I want to continue on the thread of policy. Sefu, yes, put your video back on. We want to see you. Let's, from that perspective, because you're involved in the policy conversation at various sort of global level processes. And I want to know from you, what are the key demands that you're bringing to the table in those various processes that you're involved in at a global level?
Thank you so much, Christine, for the questions. First, I would say removing the institutional barriers for young people, making the accessibility easy for finance, land, institutions, and as Seifu said earlier, water. And second is include youth as co-actor, not just one person who you keep in panel or invite in meeting, but bring their voices in the table from planning to policy, and from implementation to monitoring and evaluation, and including the accountability part as well. Third, for governments, you need to elect more young people in parliament, in ministry, and all policymaking spaces, because it's unfair that young people are not engaged in policymaking for young people. Fourth, don't keep young people in young people box, but think them as an expert, because they are also young farmers, young scientists, young parliamentarians, young advocates, young researchers, and many more. We have Wendy and Mandy, who are amazing young researchers here today. So for a better food future, we need to implement the agriculture and food system policies from local, regional, and global level into action based on the respective situation with the human-centric and also environment-centric approach. I also want to highlight that next week we have a World Food Forum where young people are discussing specific regional and global priorities, and those priorities are recognized by young people through various consultations processes, and they have policy priority ranging from agroecology in Latin America and the Caribbean to fighting food waste in the Europe and Central Asia. So we are planning to discuss that and converting into global action plan. And also, as Stefu mentioned before, CFS negotiations is also happening after a week, where we need more representation from civil society, youths, grassroots, and marginalized communities. And these spaces are super important to make sure that youth voices are just not heard, but recognized and integrated into decision-making processes and in negotiations text as well. Thank you so much, and back to you, Christine.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Guys, I want to maybe just give some time to another question that we've received here. And it's really great because we're in the company of a lot of young people. 40% of the people on the panel today are below the age of 35. So that's really refreshing. And I think I want to hear more of your voices in this conversation. So please reach out to us via the chat. To our two sort of researchers on the panel here, Mindy and Wendy, you have worked with rural farming communities, and somebody is asking here how the situation is there with energy access. Is there much productive use of energy to aid agricultural transformation processes? So Wendy, Mindy, could one of you jump in there for us?
Okay, so the issue of energy, we are from South Africa, and in the rural areas in South Africa, there isn't really much energy access because of the infrastructure limitations and all of that. So what we try to do to then try and support farmers in such rural areas to transform their agricultural systems into productive agricultural systems in a way that is sustainable and doesn't require much energy, is to try and advise them to then grow plant varieties that are locally adapted and are locally suited for their areas, so they do not need much resources and much care. For example, irrigation that will then require energy. So these crops are usually indigenous crops, or rather traditional crops, which are better suited for their environments. That way they have productive agricultural systems without having to use too much energy. Okay. I don't know if Wendy has something to add on to that.
I was just going to ask, Wendy, do you want to jump in there quickly and say something as well?
Yes, to highlight that may not be directly related to energy. One of the challenges we also had is in terms of infrastructure, because in some parts of the rural areas, their infrastructure there doesn't exist. So sometimes you find that even if we are with young farmers, I was specifically working with younger farmers, and there is a group where there were older farmers which are above the ages of 40. So for example, we started a WhatsApp group to keep everybody informed and to share any market information that we have or news that may affect their operations in terms of things like weather, crop prices, and that sort of thing. So one of the challenges we had was that the WhatsApp group wasn't very effective because the network connection was so poor. So these are some of the things that make you think that even if you can address a problem in terms of creating market access to youth, but if they don't have the technology or the network to be informed by such things, then what use does it really do?
Yeah, and I guess it's to the point about barriers here. But Mendy, I want to discuss a little bit about your efforts in setting up a development agency. And I'm interested to know only in what you identified as enabling factors that supported youth engagement. So not so much the barriers, but what were the enabling factors?
Okay, that is going to be a tricky one because we didn't have a lot of enabling factors. But I guess to just put it briefly, I count as an advantaged youth in South Africa, so I have access to resources. I guess for me that was enabling enough. But if we're going to include everybody else, then we're going to have challenges discussing the enabling factors because people do not have access to resources like I did, for example, and there isn't enough information that is out there guiding people on how to set up these agencies, and there isn't enough information on the importance of these agencies to drive developments at different scales. I'm sorry that wasn't much of enabling factors, but yeah, that's, I think, the best I have to paint the picture.
Well, that in itself is a tailoring to so much. I have one for you here. What should we do more, and what should we stop doing? This is in terms of the advocacy, and somebody's asking specifically from the Global North perspective. What should we do more, and what should we do less, I guess, from a Global North perspective to be able to facilitate the transformation of food systems in the Global South? And I think somebody in the audience is feeling that there is a responsibility in the Global North to facilitate sustainable food transformation in the Global South. So the question being, what should be happening less in the Global North and what should be happening more in the Global North to be able to help us build sustainable food systems in the Global South?
I think for the Global North, I would say less emission of carbons into the environment, because of course that leads to the depletion of the ozone layer and to the climate crisis that is ongoing. And the climate crisis, of course, affects our food and our food systems, and not just at the Global North, but across the globe. But another thing that I want to talk about is the issue of corporate capture of food systems as well, which I think is something that is happening not just from the Global North, but also coming into the Global South from the Global North. So maybe we should not have the corporate culture of our food systems. And as I said earlier, we should focus on first having food as a human right. When you're saying we want to have zero hunger and zero poverty, we should do less of the industrial agriculture. And the last thing I think I want to talk about is the issue of, I'll speak about pesticides and especially agrochemicals, which most of them that are outlawed in the Global North are being exported into the Global South to be used by the farmers. So I think those are things as the Global North, maybe we can try and reduce them. But also in the Global South, we can also try to learn from the technological advancements that have been used by the Global North. And we can learn to work together, because the global food crisis is something that affects all of us. And as I said earlier, if we're able to sit together at the table and have a conversation, it would be very important. Another thing which is also very important is not to have a fragmented response when it comes to the issues of food. And maybe here I may be a bit critical, but I will speak about it. For example, we have a group of the G7 that has been set up, which includes only only 7 countries from the Global North and 7 powerful countries. So if we are to come up with a solution for the globe, then it needs to be more inclusive. When you look at Africa or most of the countries in what we call the Global South or the Third World, they have a very their response when it comes to global politically, they have been very suppressed. So they're not able to actually be able to speak, maybe because of debt, maybe because of, very many issues that are coming from the global south. So if we're able to have this equality, even when it comes to political and global responses, it would be good. Finally, I will just mention this. Even when it comes to the representation that we have as young people in the global arenas, I would say one of the things that is very difficult for us, which also I'm facing right now, is the issue of visas. For example, if we are to have young people from the third world or from the global south getting into the global north, it is such a huge barrier. And these are things that we need to remove from such international fora of such importance for us to allow for inclusivity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you've been very effective in covering that ground. And I actually want to perhaps maybe open that up to some of our other panelists, if there's something that you feel Sefu might not have mentioned over there, but I think you did a very sort of good job in highlighting where we can actually come together and work together as partners, where there could be knowledge sharing in that sense, where people in the global south, we can learn from what's being done in the global north, but of course, pointing out areas there for us. So to the panelists, if at some point you have an idea as well to be able to tackle that, feel free to do so. Pramisha, this one is for you. To what extent is working at a policy level, to what extent can this have a significant impact in poor countries where corruption and non-enforcement of law is omnipresent? I've just given it to you verbatim, but I think you can understand what is being said here. So do you want to just tackle that one for us, Pramisha?
Thank you so much. As I also already mentioned, accountability is a huge issue. Like in most of the developing countries, we have very beautiful policies, but that is never implemented to action. And for that accountability, we need more young people. And as we can also see, young people are more accountable than other people, other people in other segments of the society. That's why we need more young people in the policy making, because if we have more young people in the policy making, that makes them more accountable to implement the policies that they make. And since they represent their communities, they can represent the views of the other young people in the society, those young people who don't have access to education, those young people who don't have a seat at the table, because it's harsh reality that not everyone can have the accessibility to those spaces. Only those, I would say, like those middle class young people who have access to education, who have access to institutions, who have access to other sort of infrastructures, have like seat in the policy making when we see the current scenario. That's why we need more young people who represents the views of the marginalized communities and other young people who don't have access to those institutions. And if we have more young people in the policy making, then they will make themselves more accountable for the implementation part as well, I would say.
Wendy, what do you think are the key elements that are needed in policy, in politics, to practice, or rather and practice, to empower youth participation in the context of food systems and transformations, and just perhaps also pick on the insights that you've drawn in your research in South Africa?
Thank you, Christine. I think the most important thing that we first need to address is the issue of data availability. There isn't a lot of data that's available across the globe in terms of where young people are in the food systems, what challenges are they facing in their different social economic contexts, what are they actually interested in, what are they aspiring to become. So the issue of data availability is very important, because just like, for example, in marketing, before you launch your product, you'd first need to do market research to understand if there are people interested in using your product and how are they thinking about using it. So it's very important for policymakers to first understand the makeup or profile of young people across the globe, so that they are able to tailor-make policies that are addressing the challenges that young people face. Another thing that's important is multi-stakeholder partnerships, because young people, or the issues that affect young people, are very diverse and they cross sectoral boundaries. They're not only concentrated in agriculture. The young people are also affected by issues coming from health, education, infrastructure development, and so forth that enable them to effectively participate in food systems. So it's very important for us to then establish those multi-stakeholder partnerships that address all issues that are related to young people's empowerment and activity in the economy as a whole. And just like Parmesia also mentioned, the importance of youth inclusion in decision-making. But when we are including these young people, we must also then remember and understand that young people are a diverse group. We come from rural areas, other people come from peri-urban areas, and other young people come from urban areas, which means that the challenges that affect us are very diverse. So it's very important to make sure that young people of all backgrounds are represented. And another issue also then becomes gender. The issues that affect young females might be slightly different from those affecting young males. So we must ensure that all of those young people are being represented in order to ensure that the policies and strategies that we create address the context that young people are coming from, the interests, diverse interests that they have in participating in food systems transformation is also covered. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you, any of you want to weigh in here at some point in something that you've heard, a follow-up, perhaps even a question, this as we are sort of also getting to the point where we want more questions from the audience. But again, just ladies and gentlemen, this is the conversation we're having, and you're hearing it from our young people. We're looking specifically at youth participation, youth engagement, as it pertains to our efforts as a global community to build and to better food systems, to transform our food systems, to make them more sustainable and more equitable. Just coming back to what the Hunger Index is telling us, that we've been confronted by a number of crises as a global community. We're talking more conflicts breaking out, the climate change crisis, and the fact that we're feeling it more and more, especially certain communities on continents like Africa and parts of Asia. We know that our island communities as well are confronted with these challenges. So more and more people are being denied the right to food. And here we're saying our young people are the ones who are being impacted by this even more acutely. They're vulnerable, but also we're looking at these food systems. They are just simply not sustainable for the future. And this is why it is important that we bring in young voices into these conversations. I'm coming back to you guys, and I think, you know, just coming from what we're seeing in the report and where you all come from and what's propelled you into this space. What does the ideal world look like in terms of how we then transform our systems? Because I think we've spoken very well about the youth engagement and the youth involvement, and we've discussed the barriers, we've discussed the enabling factors. There are not all that many of them that we've identified in our context, but there are some. But I want us to now get into a place where we can really paint a picture for our audience here, right? We're talking about the food systems. We've identified the fact that they are broken, they're not effective. So many people are going hungry. What is an ideal scenario here? What is a strong system? And I think I heard some of that. I heard words like food sovereignty. I heard people should be growing what they eat and eating what they grow, but continue on that thread. And I'm going to come to you, Sifu, because I can see that you're inspired there. Your head is nodding as I'm saying these words. So I want us to just be dreamers for a little bit, because young people are dreamers, guys. What do good food systems, sustainable food systems look like? The kind that we want to take into the future for our young people. So Sifu, I imagine you are just trying to unmute yourself over there.
Okay, sorry. I think more than just being dreamers, young people are now innovators. We are leaders. We are the people who are at the front, and we are not dreaming anymore. We want a seat at the table. So for me, an ideal would be one for the intersectionality of the young people and the diversity of the young people to be represented when it comes to different fora, from the grassroots level to the county level, to the national level, to the international level, where we have youth who are actually the majority when it comes to leadership positions, first of all in their countries, but also leadership positions across the globe. if we look across the globe, I'm sure most of the leaders that we see, the presidents, none of them are actually below 35, or actually, let me even say below 40. It's maybe 40 and above, 50 and above, 60 and above. An ideal for me would be for us to actually have young people in leadership, actually as the majority. Now, when you look at the demographics of the world, and I will not give specifics, but you will find that in each and every country, the young people are actually the bulk of, what forms the demographic of each country. They're the people who have the strength to be able to work, the labor to be able to go into these farms, the expertise to be able to become students and researchers. They have the energy. So for us to have representation of young people across the globe, across the board, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to global decision making, when it comes to journalism, when it comes to each and every aspect, in this way that the voices of the young people will be amplified when they are at their peak. And also when it's time for us as young people to give room, we need to mentor the people who are coming after us and to give way for them as well when they get to be as young as we were, and we get to be able to move on. So of course that would be ideal for me, and also to see women take part in more of the leadership across the world, because of course, and especially where I stand, it is increasingly more difficult for women as much as it is difficult for all of us as young people. And also just globally, for us to have probably an end to the conflicts that we're seeing, the Ukrainian-Russian aggression, whatever is happening in Palestine and Israel, Western Sahara, Morocco, and many other conflicts that really affect people when it comes to especially nutrition and food systems.
Yeah, I mean, guys, I'm hearing this, and obviously in many ways talking to you here, I'm preaching to the choir, but we have a that for a lot of young people, agriculture is not necessarily the space that they think about wanting to be active in. So in many ways, while we are taking the message out there that we need to create a space for young people, I think we also need to raise awareness among young people about this space. I know somebody once said, oh, we need to make agriculture sexy again, right? Because people just have wrong ideas. I mean, who wants to go and be a farmer? The image of a farmer, it's not something that people really aspire to, right? I don't think you ask many people about what you want to be one day, and they tell you, I want to be a farmer. So what do we do then to make sure that this is not something that is of a last resort, right? That in this modern world of artificial intelligence and all that we have done as a global community from the technological front, of course, we are employing technology in agriculture, but how then do we really need to rethink food systems so that more young people can be engaged in this space?
I think just to jump on that, Christine, one of the things that's important is ensuring that, I think I touched on this earlier, that first, let's understand what causes young people to think of agriculture as a last resort. So what causes that is because of their social economic context. So we need to ensure that, one, we are creating a space where we are investing in human capacities. Even if a young person thinks of wanting to farm, but let's get them involved in farming with precision agriculture, the use of technology, things that would be exciting and interesting to us. So let's invest in those areas, which is mainly infrastructure development. And once we've created awareness that there are other careers that one could pursue in agriculture, let's now follow that with the right support, the policy, strategies, and funding to open up spaces for young people to be involved in a wide variety of careers throughout the value chain. And let's link them up with people or institutions and stakeholders that are in those spaces so that people are able to then see that, oh, okay, if I want to, I can become a farmer. If I want to, I can be a seed scientist or an agronomist. I could work in maybe microbiology. So as we bring that awareness, let's also follow up the awareness with the appropriate mentorship, that young people would need in order to occupy those spaces effectively. And a part of that also then links into other sectors, like, for example, your infrastructure development, telecommunications, and so on. So that's why I keep emphasizing the importance of multi-stakeholder partnerships, because empowering and equipping young people to actively engage in food systems is not an agriculture sector thing. It's not something that's only under the umbrella of the Ministry or Department of Agriculture. It needs everybody involved to contribute and then push the agenda forward.
Yes, guys, and I'm looking at the clock, and I wondered if we should maybe just start coming around the circle here a little bit and bringing our discussion to a close, because I'm interested in your input, the others, on this particular point as well. I know that Wendy's done a good job on that front, but perhaps if you have other ideas. But also, I just want to collect maybe what would be your calls to action today. What is it that you would like to leave people reflecting upon as we bring our conversation to a close? And while they're giving that a bit of a think, I want to tell our audience members, we are still 200 strong, that we are not ending the conversation here. In fact, there will be a breakout session after this. At the moment, we've not been taking questions verbally. We've only been taking written questions. We've not been able to get through all of them, but we've made provision. There will be a breakout session when we close the meeting. And you can join us then. We can really just continue that conversation. So guys, perhaps while you're thinking about your final takeaways, let's maybe throw one to the audience here in the way of our Mendy. I think maybe just a reminder of how you can get involved in that. So you can just, in the meantime now, be thinking about, what do you think should be the next steps to realize your vision for future food systems, right? Well, we want to talk about the next steps here. So again, you can go to, you can use the barcode over there that's on your screen, or you can go to menti.com, and there's a new code here, 18556905. I know this is okay. So what do you think should be the next steps to realize your vision for future food systems? Okay, so somebody says more involvement of women. I'll give the others a moment just to reflect upon that, and perhaps what you've heard from our panelists today. More honest inclusion of youth, I'm seeing. Working with young people for the better food future. Youth leadership. I mean, our young people have made a very compelling case today. It's absolutely a no-brainer why we should increase their involvement of young people. Somebody talks about innovation, creating a permanent exchange within generations. Yes, connecting youth with ICT, tackling those social and economic inequalities, inclusion for youth, investing in innovative ideas which are spearheaded by youth and women, finance and support. Yes, somebody rightly says, how do you get a load to invest if you have no assets? Yep. Including more and more young people. For those of us who can read French, we've got some input there coming to us in French. We need to tackle corruption, absolutely, and increase our governance. Food policies that address the challenge of food affordability, learning about corporate capture, more innovation. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. And I think there is certainly, we want to pick up on these ideas as well in that breakout session. We'll be taking about 30 minutes to be in conversation, establishing environmentally friendly, nutrition-dense food, transforming those value chains, reforming of land ownership. We really have an expert audience here today. I think between us here in this meeting, we have all the answers. It's the implementation that really is the challenge, because we've got to get everybody on board. And I'm hearing young people say we need to be involved in the policy decision making. We need to be at the table. And I know that many of us on the call today, in this meeting, in this session, are young people. Perhaps we need to now take up arms, so to say. Let's go out into our communities. raise that awareness, mobilize our young people, put ourselves in the front lines, as we see in our young women are doing today. They've risen up in their communities, and we've been able to identify them as change makers. It starts at a local level. Pramisha's here, she knows she started back home in Nepal. She's sitting in Rome today, taking this message to the global stage. Okay, so let's park that for the moment. Thank you all so much for these incredible ideas that you're bringing into the conversation. So I really hope many of you will stay as we open up that conversation in that breakout session. We will be giving you all an opportunity to actually put on your cameras and talk, share your ideas, your thoughts, your impulses. But now I want to do just sort of a closing round. Girls, you've been fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm proud of the work that you all are doing. Before I let you go, I want you to just give us a final word, right? Everything that we've discussed today, what does it come down to for you as we put our heads together about increasing young people's participation in that process that we want to undertake in fixing our food system so that no one goes hungry, so that we can achieve SDG 2, zero hunger in our global world. So how we'll do this is we will go, the names in this order, we'll start with you, Mendy, we'll come to Pramisha, then we'll go to Wendy, and we'll finish off with Sefu. So make it a quick one, something that could be put in a tweet with the hashtag GHI 2023, and we can get underway now. I've already forgotten the order of the names that I've given, but I know you guys remember.
Okay, so basically, in summary, I think we can all agree that one, we need to get to a point where we accept the fact that the current food systems are not working out, they're failing, and we need youth to come through with their innovation and their ideas to transform the food systems into food systems that are contextualized and environmentally friendly to ensure that the global population has enough food produced to support their food and nutritional requirements, basically, at large.
Well said. Thank you.
I would say listen, act, and create alliance. Listen what young people has offered to transform the food system sustainably. Every action matters. Act to transform the food systems, keeping in mind environment and most vulnerable and marginalized communities. And for young people, you need to seek alliance with organizations and partners who share your vision.
Wendy?
For me, it would be, let us imagine and work towards a world where young people's livelihoods are promoted through effective and meaningful participation in food systems. How do we do that? Through multi-stakeholder partnerships, ensuring that we are supporting young people to take up leadership positions. But not only that, but to ensure that their thoughts, ideas, and perspectives are translated into effective policies on the ground, and a world where a young person can become an entrepreneur, an employer, an employee, and participate in all areas of the value chain. Let us imagine that world. Let us work together towards achieving that world. Thank you.
Sefu.
Coherence between the short-term responses to immediate needs and the longer-term transformative action, and especially in a context of global transition and climate change. And to attain this perspective in public policy also, to engage political decision makers, consumers, social movements, young people, and to bring all of us on the table.
That's right, bringing us all onto the table. And I think that is the perfect place to really round up our conversation here today. Just another thank you to all of my panelists today. Thank you for the work that you're doing, for the message that you've brought to this platform. We've all been inspired by your insights, by your ideas, and certainly by the work that you are doing. So Pramisha, Sefu, Wendy, and Mendy, thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation with you. To our audience, they're staying behind. They'll be in that breakout sessions. Let's keep the conversation alive, so to say. And essentially, I want to thank you to even our young activists who we saw in that video. Thank you so much for inspiring our conversation as it began, to our colleagues, to our partners, participants in our various projects around the world, people who've shared their thoughts and insights. Of course, the teams that are working in the background to make sure that this event has been a success. A massive thank you to everybody involved, our translators, making sure that we can get this message out in the various languages that we are being able to do that in. We also, ladies and gentlemen, would appreciate your feedback. It will only take you 2 minutes. Please indulge us. We want to hear how we can make this experience even better. There's a link that we've provided in the chat. Please, ladies and gentlemen, just take that 2 minutes. It will really help us if you could just give us your feedback. Again, we want to keep this conversation going. So for the next 30 minutes, we have made a breakout session available. Free to join us, to share ideas with us, and there we'll be taking that conversation further. And then, of course, this recording, we know that this event was being recorded. We're going to put that recording on our website. Follow us on social media and stay tuned for when that happens. And of course, once again, thank you to everybody for joining us today, for staying the course. This is such an important conversation. We just have to look forward now. We see what the numbers are telling us, what the patterns and the trends are showing us. Yes, we've been dealt a number of blows in terms of our progress towards our SDGs. We're at the halfway mark, 7 years to go, but we can still do this. And what excites me most is our young people have ideas. Somebody rightly corrected me and saying we're not just dreamers, but young people have the ideas, they have the plans, they have the energy and the passion, and if we bring them around the table, we can spur our efforts on to build sustainable food systems that are equitable, so that everybody on the face of this earth can enjoy their right to food. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, for myself and the team, thank you all. Please stay the course. Let's continue the conversation in that breakout session. Looking forward to engaging with you. Thank you very much, everybody.